Hey everyone, I just read this book yesterday. This is Paradise, is the title of the book, and it's by a chap called Hyok Kang. The full title: This is Paradise, My North Korean Childhood. And Scotland on Sunday, on the front cover, says an engrossing picture of a nation that remains closed to the world, aptly described as the Jurassic Park of communism. This was actually a book that my wife was reading whilst I read something else, and she said I thought I'd enjoy it, so I read it. I did enjoy it, but she knows me well. I'll read you the back as well. There's a review here by John Snow. This is a rare and precious insight into the most obscure regime on earth through the startled and observant eyes of a 13-year-old boy who not only escaped but survived to tell this harrowing yet intriguing tale, the most penetrating account of life in North Korea I have ever read. And then there's one by somebody called Lisa Apignanesi. I hope I said that right. An extraordinary story, a simple yet luminous account of what it means to grow up in one of the world's little known and most oppressive dictatorships. This North Korean Harry Potter has the evils of tyranny to contend with, and escape is the hard road to an asylum which is hardly that. I don't think that made sense. Anyway, it's a great book. I read it in a couple of hours. It's 200 pages long, and this guy was actually this book was written as a result of Philippe Grangerio, a French journalist, meeting him at a convention. Um, and there are a lot of people there at the convention talking about North Korea. These were people who'd escaped North Korea. And then there was this guy, Hyok, who sat quietly but had drawn pictures of life in North Korea. And the book is actually illustrated not with photographs, but with pictures. And they're the kind of pictures that you might draw in your diary if you did pictures rather than writing. So the pictures are quite good actually if you like art, and it's interesting because the pictures show in almost cartoon-like quality some really horrible things. I mean, there were children walking around in the marketplace, toddlers who looked like skeletons picking up food hanging around the food stalls so people could afford them, and then the people who were paying for the food would give them a good solid kick because, and they're terrible things, but what he says is hunger will make you think only of yourself. There's a story in here. The main character, the protagonist, his father was sent to a re-education, basically a prison camp, where most people starve to death or are tortured to death because they've done something to offend Kim Il Sung or Kim Il Jong. I can't actually recall which one's still alive. There's actually flowers in North Korea named after them. One is called Kim Il Sungya, one is called Kim Il Jongya. Very imaginative. And there are giant statues. Where this boy grew up, there's a giant brass statue, or steel statue, or some kind of metal statue at the top of a mountain. And on Kim Il Sung or Kim Il Jong Day, you had to climb it and you had to adorn it with flowers. Now, if you failed to do that, you'd probably get killed. Firing squad. So the whole country is just this crazy personality cult, it seems. But the amazing thing, the thing that really surprised me is, I've heard about North Korea before and some of the kind of things that go on there, the prison camps, the starvation. There was a famine in North Korea that began in 93, 94, and millions of people starved to death. Millions of people. People were eating grass, people were eating bark. There was still food going in, but it was usually just used to feed people who the dictator liked, party members. If you offended the dictator, you wouldn't just get in trouble. You and three generations, grandparents, grandchildren, and yourself, you were done for. You're sent to a camp and basically tortured or starved to death, or worked to death, unless you maybe had a letter from the grand dear father leader or whatever they have to call him, which showed that you were in good favor. If you weren't, if you'd lived in Japan or anything, then you were done for as well. If you watched anything from outside Korea, you were done for. This is where it gets really interesting, because how can people live in a country like that and think that the rest of the world is even more fucked up than they are? It's through strict government control of what they see, of media. The boy's father managed to run away to China when he came back and tried to convince the family to go to China, because even poor people there eat rice. You know, poor people in Korea just die, or they eat grass and then it poisons them and then they die. Um, some of the delicacies, catching frogs, you could get shot for that. There were farms with plenty of food, but that was all for export. They were state controlled. It's really quite something. I'm not going to talk too long about it, but it's a really good book. It's really well written. It's quite harrowing, but in the language it's told, it seems to soften it. But then it hits you afterwards. You think, wow, what did I just read? It's really good. I do recommend it. This one was $9.99. It's 204 pages long. At the end, it talks about the different types of penal labor colonies in North Korea, from a US Committee for Human Rights in North Korea report published in October 2003. Interesting book, highly recommended. Oh, there's a review on there by Mail on Sunday as well, but it's the Mail, so I'm not going to bother reading that. This is Paradise, My North Korean Childhood by Hyok, Kang, and I'd actually like to talk about it longer, but there's not much more to say. North Korea is pretty messed up, and the people in there are suffering terribly because everybody in North Korea believes that it was the South Korea that started the war, led by Americans. Americans, you're not allowed to say Americans. You have to say American bastards or long-nosed foreigners. You're not allowed to say South Koreans. You have to say Southern puppets. Literally, you're not allowed to. If you do, you're going to get lashed. The other thing is how the teachers treat the children. I mean, these are 9-year-old children, and punched in the face, kicked in the stomach, lashed with. This is just standard. They just take there and they stand there and take it. So I guess North Koreans are really tough. You got to be to survive. They're also apparently very, very short because they're all malnourished. I remember the last book I read in North Korea, In Order to Live. I was talking to a friend of mine, one an acquaintance of mine who's Chinese, and I had the book with me, and when she saw it, I told her some of the stuff that was written in it. She said, no, I'm sure it's just made up, which is interesting because I guess China's socialist or communist as well. But China is actually the only country in the world, along with some regions of South America, which has continuously lifted people out of poverty. So this bullshit that capitalism and free markets lift people out of poverty, it's nonsense. There's 40 years of evidence to show that it's nonsense. What you have under neoliberalist governments, I'm getting off track here, so I'll just say this, is what I like to call trickle-up economics, which is basically the rich, the business owners, not just the business owners, but the big companies, the oil companies, the Amazons, the people who all the state-owned things, utilities, railways were sold off to. They can fuck up and do whatever they want, and then there's trickle-up economics. The people who actually have to pay tax, working people, their tax money just goes up to the people who are fucked up to bail them out or give them big bonuses. So that's trickle-up economics. So all these people doing about trickle-down economics, they're either just talking out their arse, lying stupid, or they've got everything upside down. It's a con. North Korea is a con as well for the people who live in there. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll shut up now. But there you go. Good book. Recommend it. Would I give it 10 out of 10? I'd probably give it 8 out of 10. I like books. I easily give books 10 out of 10. To get a low rating from me, a book's got to be pretty crap. But then the other thing is I read quite fast. So, if I read a book and I don't particularly enjoy it, it's not like, oh my god, I spent a week on it. I'll have spent a few hours on it. There you go.